We're recording. So, a first question for you, Mr. McKnight. When did you realize that you were an entrepreneur?
I realized that I was an entrepreneur when I opened up my first business. That's after the military and obtaining a job with a manufacturing operation as a salesman, and then decided that I would go and open up a business of my own in Harlem, New York. I knew then that the heartaches of starting and running a business was an awesome task, much bigger than I had anticipated. Did well for the first few years. And then after that, it started going downhill to the extent of going out of existence. Uh, and that left a bad taste in my mouth for being an entrepreneur. I don't like losing, and that was a loss for me. So I thought of regrouping and recuperating from that and doing better.
And how did you do
So
that?
I decided to go back to college and learn more about business, and at the same time figure out how I was going to feed my family. And so I said, "Oh, Uncle Sam, military, you owe me one." And I used the GI Bill to start attending college on business and to figure out what did I do wrong in my first entrepreneurship business. And
What did you study?
I was strictly in the field of business and economic finance, and until I recognized in my sophomore year that, wait a minute, I'm preparing myself for major industry. I didn't do well on the time clock at the post office in my first job after my service in the Air Force. So I'm not going to do well in industry either, because I just don't like time clocks. And I wanted to figure out, if I'm going to spend this time getting an education, I wanted to do more than provide a job in major industry for me. That may be okay for some, but it wasn't for me. And so I seeked around the university to find out what else they had to offer other than the business course. And I learned that they had a new program called the Urban Studies Department. This was in the late 60s.
So you're in the New York area, you're coming from a sharecropping background, and it's the 60s, and you see this program for urban studies. Like, what did you think when you saw that? Like, was it, I don't know, what went through your mind?
I saw that as the answer to my question, that if I could get the business knowledge as well as serve the community, that would be a win. And so I made my emphasis on doing the urban study, as it was called then, program. And as a part of my studies in that curriculum, I would actually interact with the community by creating a program that could, in fact, benefit the community and the individuals in that program.
Why were you motivated to do that?
Well, the reason I wanted to do that is because I failed and it hurt. And I did not want anybody else to go through that hurt. And so I felt that if I could do anything, I could create something that would prevent that from happening to others. And the Urban Studies Department curriculum addressed that, looking for ways to help develop the community. And at that time, there weren't many people talking about economic development. Talking primarily of social services to the community and not any economic development programs. And so I thought I would come up with one that would prepare entrepreneurs to go into business and be successful at it in their given communities. And so I created something and named it the Inner City Business Fund.
Ah, okay. So,
So,
and that's what we see in that newspaper article that you shared on Facebook.
yeah,
Okay, can you tell us some more
yeah,
about
that's what
that?
you say that again.
You tell us some
Trust.
more about that newspaper article, what that was
Yeah,
about?
that was the beginning. That was more than I anticipated it to be. Um, it uh, it was such a need for that kind of service during that time. If you can recall, back in '69 and '70, it's just after the Vietnam War, and there was a need for lots of activities back in the country. It was coming, lots of people coming back from overseas, and we needed to help those people get into businesses in the community. You know, we did have a problem. There were a lot of people did not welcome us from the military coming back from that war, and we kind of felt a lot of the military people felt kind of bad because we were being almost rocks thrown at us for that war. But anyway, we at the time it was good to try to help them get into some kind of a business setting in their community to be accepted. So I went full-heartedly into that after selling the Board of Regents of my university that they had worked for 100 years within that given community and had not done anything about reaching out in the community. And that I had this plan that I could bring through the urban study department that I would develop for the university and start implementing it in the community. And they received it with open arms. And it moved on into history in terms of providing that service and support in the given community. So that's kind of the beginning of the inner city business fund. Now, the kinds of services that it provided were to bring together people who had an interest in becoming entrepreneur, creating a curriculum of 16 weeks, 2 hours a night for 16 weeks to learn the basic rudiments of required by an entrepreneur. As such, I think the New York Times and a lot of the newspapers in the area did an article, and eventually ABC filmed one of the classes for the 16-week course and showed it on their network for 2 years, really, under the Christopher Hour. And so it became well known. And eventually, someone from one of the departments, federal departments, Commerce Department, wanted me to speak to the Senate Committee on Small Business Act, and I did. And several of the federal programs supported that concept and idea, and adapts within their agencies to support it as well. So it was well on its way of being accepted. The whole concept was the first one in the country that was addressing that, specifically minority and women, uh, to get into the entrepreneurship. Uh, the financing and meeting the criteria was an awesome thing. A couple of the other universities recognized that. Dartmouth, in particular, the Tuck School and Engineering School invited me up and asked to become a part of it with me. And we created the first internship for MBA candidates of that school under my direction in that project. We put together business plans and assist the development of entrepreneurship under that inner city business project. That's kind of a quick. I'm assuming that I have a time limit on one project, so I better end it right there because there's a long history on that program.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I recognize that. Um, but I appreciate you like kind of giving a really good overview of how big that little project that you took on became. How did you feel as this stuff was just happening? Was it overwhelming, or was it kind of like, yeah, I did it?
It scared the hell out of me, to be honest with you. It grew so fast and so big and so powerful. There were examples uh, that it was just outside of my scope of even anticipating that it would reach into getting the kind of attraction. The Berkeley Law Project assigned 3 attorneys to work with to do research from San Francisco. Dartmouth was involved. Uh, uh, the Washington was involved with the concept that works in community. SBA, Commerce Department, all of those agencies were involved to support the idea of entrepreneurship in the given community. And the connection there is one of having the goods and services available to the communities, accessible to them, was key. Um, the local bread store, the local milk store, things of that type could be in a given community. So it would provide goods and services and employment in the community. So, and that's what the Urban Studies Department was preparing us to address. So we were doing both things. One was trying to make sure that my passion of making sure no one failed like I did was being taken care of, and at the same time offering opportunities in the community.
Nice. So this chat is on entrepreneurship, but in your book, you mentioned some nonprofit projects as well. This was after the Inner City Business Project. So how does community service relate to your core message of economic stability as being a way to build communities?
Well, uh, it was 4-year college. In 3.5 years, I graduated with 2 degrees. One was urban studies and one was in business. Well, the I had to figure what I was going to do after graduation. And so in the last year there, uh, the Berkeley Law Project and the Dartmouth School candidates that was every semester I had a student from one of them working with me, and they were graded on my recommendation on how well they did for that semester. Now I'm an undergraduate, and I'm recommending grades for the graduate. That's how powerful that program was. Accepted. So I used to do speaking engagements at each one of the universities for the students, and we came up with a plan that this concept could carry out in the community after the inner city business project. One of the things that I discovered in the inner city business project was that I couldn't personally take care of every business. And I'm graduating from college, so there's no longer an inner city business project. So I wanted to max out what it could do for the community before leave. And one of the things was to create a young men business association that would do a social thing in the community. So I decided a Little League with my co-director, Gerald McKnight, who ended up being mayor of the city. And we did the Little League, keep that doing for the youth thing. The other thing was we wanted to create a economic development venture that would generate monies enough to staff and grow business in the community. And so we pursued getting federal funding to support that and was successful in getting it and formed what was called the Bergen Greenville Development Corporation. and I think the title of it at that time was Title 7. It dealt with whatever monies you got would be given to you for a 2-year period to create business that would employ X amount of people within that 2-year period. Well, my role was to create something for the community and leave them and go out and do consulting work. That was what I wanted to do forever, create programs like that. So we put together a plan and it got approved. I didn't realize the condition it was approved on until my secretary called me and said, Mr. McKnight, you got a couple of checks here from the Treasury Department, $500,000 a piece made out to you. I said, call them up and find out what the problem is. Why did they make them check out for $500,000 a piece? So they refer me back to the department in DC. In DC, Washington said, hey, Treasury Department made the call. You ask them why they made check out to you. So I come up with it and said, if you're going to run, if you're not, if this project is so dynamic that you must run it yourself. You can't look at all your staff, all your people with all the degrees, but they don't have the experience to run this program. So we give you that money. You must run it or send the checks back. So I was in a bad way there. I couldn't sleep for a few nights. I finally went to the board chairman and I said, look, I don't want to be pinned down on any one thing. I want to do more of this across the country. So he said, well, you can't leave us. We don't have anybody that's capable of doing it. Their Treasury Department is correct. So we had to make a deal that I would run it. And in the 2-year period, the criteria and obligation that that project was supposed to, I don't remember the number of people, but I think it was like 70 or so employee you had to employ and create careers for them to keep working after the project. We multiply that by 5 times the criteria under that very Greenville Development Corporation. So that impact on the community was devastating. I mean, it was outstanding, and that it provide that many jobs and opportunities in that area with those funds. Uh, they After that contract was over, I was faced with continuing being the director as some of my friends from Howland Commonwealth Council, Jim Dowdy and Frank Thomas of Bed-Stuy Restoration, who were friends and people who helped me put that plan together. They stuck with their programs, and that's what they did for the rest of their life to retirement. I wanted to create more of this in and around the country as a consultant because my speaking engagement and consultant work was expanding all over the country and even some out of the country. And that's what I wanted to do, not run a program. So the effects of it in the community, providing goods and services by the various ventures and jobs in the community with that grant money over the 2 years to the extent that it was 5 times the required amount at the end of the 2 years. And so I was faced with renewing my contract, and the Treasury Department and all the people in Washington wanted to say, you got to keep running. I said, nope. So the board was faced with closing it down because I wasn't going to run it. And they decided to try to run it on their own for a while. And I continued on with my consulting work in and around the country, but all over the country, really doing development work of the same time.
Did you found other ways to help in the community though, and other projects after that?
In many cities, practically all the major cities on the East Coast, either help advising them on how to do similar kinds of economic development, create new little leagues and social programs for the youth, a lot of which is outlined in the book. I can't remember all of them, but
Well, good thing you wrote it
I
down.
Did I write it down?
I said it's a good thing you wrote it down since you can't remember all of it.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't remember. I can say this. I I stay busy doing that, either um, patching up organization who made an attempt and got into trouble of non-compliance of their grant conditions.
Mm.
A lot of work, that type of work, was going into cities with agencies and helping them clean that up and getting back in good standings to create new ones. And never had I solicited a case. My, until retirement, I've never solicited a case at all. My cases all came through references, either through indirectly from the government agencies or some of the social agencies that I worked at. So I feel uh, I couldn't elaborate all that in the book, but I feel more successful in community development, community economic development, than I am with small business development, because as an individual small business, they couldn't afford my service. And unless we had something similar to the inner city business product that could provide services, then I couldn't personally do it for them. It would be too costly for a small business.
That's a very good point that you bring out. The difference of being a small business consultant and being like a community development consultant. You know,
Yes,
I think you
right.
really spelled that out really well. So based on your experience with developing the community in such a major city of Harlem area and Jersey City and stuff, um, how would you compare what's going on right now in America with what you experienced during the civil rights era?
Um, Even in the early 60s, I'm sorry, in the early 70s and the late 60s, when we had a lot of turmoil in the various cities, protesting, marching, and that against injustice, uh, lots of the people who were involved in that were close friends of mine. Each one of them had their role. I can recall meeting with Leroy Jones Baraki, which is the father of the mayor of the city of Northtown, um, Walter Leopold, many, Elvin Austin of Medic Press, Howard Johnson of Camden, BPU, Black People Movement. All of those people were in frequent calls to me in terms of advice on how to keep their program working. And some of them became a part of it. Arch Whitehead, who was with who's Colson Whitehead, the Pulitzer Prize winner of Nickelboy. Uh, Nickelboy became a part of me. He was with the State Department and Farley Dickinson. We were all friends working with community development. There's a story with the State Department with Arch Whitehead, when those who opposed community development as a priority funds, uh, Arch was brought in on loan from Farley Dickinson, and the governor disagreed with Arch's philosophy and said money was going to be channeled elsewhere. Arch said, no way, it's going into the community. So to give you an idea how the community worked, that all of those people I just mentioned, Arch made a phone call to us and said, come and help me lobby against the state who wish to channel his monies elsewhere. And Arch challenged the governor to lunch and said he would debate the issue on the lawn of the state house. Um, and so we went and lobbied with him, got the message across that the community was going to stand for that. And Arch resigned and became a part of my organization. And while he was with me, he wrote poetry, 2 books a week. He never drove, so he was taking the subway back to Harlem, and we became friends. Um, he took it's an interesting thing about the community development conscious people. We don't put money in front of everything. We put the community first, and if you can make a living at it, then fine. And that's where Arch was. That's where I was. Most of the people I knew were that way. And so it takes a commitment to want to do that in the community. I may have wandered away from your question. You have to bring me back to it. I forgot.
Okay, so I was mostly asking for actual tips of what we can take away, right now. If it is similar to
Oh,
what
yeah.
you saw back then, how can we?
Thank you. Thank you. I got it. I'm recall. The efforts has to go to the community in terms of making adjustments on the services, goods and services to the community, whether it be the police department or any other social agencies. It has to be uh, focused on the community. So whatever that needs to be brought to the attention of the decision maker who makes the decision on whether they're going to focus on and permit community input. Sometimes needs to be convincing. So the marching, the fist raising, the talking, the writing, whatever method there is to get the message across that the community is dissatisfied, those are roles for people who does that. At the same time, people who are in position to make that happen are the ones who protest and get their attention. And we used to say in the past, let these people know we're upset and they need to do something. But we need to qualify ourselves to do something when that happens. So I took the position of being able to qualify the community, members of the community, to implement whatever resources and rights that they gain in it that will benefit the community. So there are some of us that can march and get the attention and get things to happen. There are others that will implement it and make sure it happens. I choose the latter, that I would qualify the people, help them put together things that's going to develop the community. And
So,
as today, even if the social programs, if monies were given in comparison to today, and I agree with the idea that the police department, God knows I don't envy the policemen today. It's kind of rough out there, but if some of the money, some of the responsibilities of doing like the medical portions of it and some of the social responsibilities that they have to carry with their badge and their gun, if they were relieved of those things, I think it would be a very, very much a help. But that would have to go into the community and be monitored that others affected. And so they need to be, whoever and whatever is going to do that, they need to get qualified for it. So someone needs to be looking at that with what's going on today. I see what's going on today is pretty much the same as what was going on in the 70s. And we can get the attention and get some support, but we have to make sure it works. And if no one is concentrating on making sure it works, we're going to be right back here another 30 years doing the same thing again. So I think that I don't see any difference between the complaints today, double standards, anything that perpetuate or promote double standards is an enemy of me. And so I will work towards anything that's going to make alleviate double standards, but I want whatever that happens that it be effective. So I really don't see, I'm kind of uh, at a loss as to why are we revisiting the early 70s again with the same complaints. It seemed to me that we should be able to cure that one. But in answer to your question, I see it pretty much the same in terms of the complaints, the denial by people uh, uh, that who does not want to alleviate special interest groups and privileged groups and things of that sort.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know what you need to do to change their minds, but I know the people who suffer from that should no longer suffer.
Well, it sounds like you're saying those who can build, those who can be community engagers in the form of entrepreneurship, now is the time to do that. Because if we are
Yes,
successful with rebuilding, we're going to need it.
I think so. I think a vehicle need to be put in place to make sure that it's not waste, whatever resources come to that. And the major, I did a case for the Attica prisoners once they got discharged
Mm-hmm.
from doing their 20 years for the Urban League in New York. And they asked me to come in. I think Judge Wingate was the chairman then. He asked me to come in and give them a plan. And Arch Whitehead was so they called Arch, and Arch called and said, "You need to talk to Jim." So I went and talked with them, and this, "Can you put together a plan?" I said, "Yeah, that's going to be a simple one." They said to me, what you going to do?" I said, "We're going to put them all, make them all entrepreneurs." It got quiet, like everybody listening here probably got quiet. They're ex-cons. How are you going to get money? I said, "You got the money. You have the money. How do we have it?" So I did my, Urban League New York, and never got
So
national.
you
And then,
recommend that felons have
so
their own business rather than go work for someone?
yes, and my answer to your question was, if you have problems in Harlem, who whose business is that is the most safe? Those guys there, they're the ones that's got business in Harlem. If you own real estate in a community, you have a different take on the protection,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be a business or real estate or whatever it is. And that's as basic as we can get with that. So yes, uh, own businesses. When the foreigners come into this country, they own the little stores providing goods and resources as a need. They may even live outside of the community, but they own them. They can see that. So why can't we do that in our? We should own uh, businesses, and I actually think. Well, first of all, the based on my experiences, there are no shortage of money to support such concept.
The concept of
There are plenty
more
in the Beltway.
entrepreneurship.
Excuse me?
The concept of more entrepreneurship, the concept of more small businesses. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's available. The bank, it was not available before the Inner City Business Project. It was because I put together a plan showing them that they don't lose in the process, and it's commitment and obligation because federal deposits are in the bank. I sold that to the banking institution in every place that I worked. They wanted a good plan that they didn't have to worry about and spend. Well, at that time, the administrative cost was, I forgot, 3%. And I reduced that cost to 1%. And the government had the banks under a rule that they can only charge 1% or 0.5% over that as far as the interest on these small business loans. And I sold the banking institution and the government that, look, if I did all the administrative work, put together the plans, and all you have to do is read the first line of my letter and you approve it, and you don't lose in the process, and it didn't cost you anything to put together the plan, I'll do that. That was the vehicle that I used to sell the banks and the governments to guarantee the loans. That's what the Inner City Business Project, and that was my creation in that project. So I'm saying that because it's important that some monitoring or some kind of vehicle needs to be there that assures that it's implemented for the betterment of the community. It has to be there. And the university, I was able to get several universities involved with it on that.
Okay. So let's say we actually do this, having more businesses, having more people go into entrepreneurship. We're recovering from the time period that we're dealing with right now. You've worked with a lot of people, a lot of small business owners that were new to running their own business. What would you say is the most common mistake that people make when they decide they're going to do this?
A business plan, development in mindset on paper as their guide, or what has transpired, in my opinion, is that several of the type businesses that most minorities got into were the types that you didn't have to have a business plan. And let that sink in for a minute because that's key. Um, if you were going to hustle items that you don't need a business plan because it's so lucrative, then to talk to that person about a business plan is a joke. But everybody is not going to be able to get into that type of business. So and everybody don't want to get into that type. But to provide the goods and services in a given community, it would be necessary that they be successful, or they'll fall prey to like what I did, open up my business. So I see that a business plan, whether they write it out themselves, say, okay, I want to open up a shoe shop. I need so much leather and I need so much tax or whatever there is, and it's going to cost me this, and I expect to get so much set. Put together a plan before going into it. Uh, most people don't believe that that's important. Uh, they just go into it. I mean, the barber industry, for an example, they learn the technical skill of how to cut. They're the best cutters in the world. They can do, and a lot of them don't recognize that they are now entrepreneurs. They really don't. I'm a barber. That's it. I don't need all that other stuff. So, and I'm faced with that when time comes for chairs and repairs of chairs and replacement of chairs and building the market. Then they're hit with that, and they have to try to learn it then. So, and from what I can understand is that the schools does not teach the business; they teach the technical aspect of barbering. And so I feel that that's missing, and that should be added to the school system. And I mean, talking to some people about that now in my retirement. So that's where most of minority people uh, don't have any respect for a business plan. And financial institutions mostly rely on that it has some validity.
Awesome. So, okay, the last question, because we're about an hour, and then I want to open up to see if anybody has questions for you. Um, what do you think of the internet as a tool for small businesses?
It's a complicated mess. It is uh, on the plus side. It's a communicator. It is a tool. It could be one of the greatest assets in any business. Uh, but the learning, the process of it, and utilization of it to its effectiveness is key. For an example, what we're doing here now, this is your first venture into doing one of these. Um, I'm sure this is going to have some kind of effect uh, to the people who can view this, but there's so many that cannot. And I think there's a missing link there that could be improved. But I am convinced through you and other people that I know that the internet is the answer for entrepreneurship, and many are going moving forward on that one much more than I'm in touch with. So it has an A plus as far as I'm concerned. If it could be, if a way could be found out for the average person to utilize it, that
So uh, this is actually a personal victory to hear him say this because, he's been kicking and screaming against the internet for the past, I think, 25 years, Dad. Is that about right?
yeah, okay,
I was lucky enough to have internet in the house, but I was literally the only person in the house that knew how to use it. And every attempt that I made to try to teach him how to use it was just, no. So for
yeah,
him, for him to be saying this now is like, yes, finally, you hear me. But it's very true. I've worked with a lot of most of my clients. Majority of my clients are small businesses that are new to the internet and fight me tooth and nail that they don't need to be online. And I'm like, yes, you do. Here's why. Let's build you a website, stuff like that. And even my dad was one of those people that built him a website, get him a Facebook page, and this corona situation really showed that it's a good thing we did that. Otherwise
yeah.
he wouldn't have been able to promote his business because how did you market the books without the website? What were you doing?
Mm.
You were going.
I think through this, I think this shutdown period that we are a lot of people I'm in touch with were missing the opportunity to spend that time wisely at home and doing research on future. Um, Learn to garden, do something that can produce goods and services to a family. Uh, Learn the internet, do some things. I've been so busy since this shutdown. I increased my involvement during the shutdown.
Yeah.
So I suggest strongly anyone who's thinking about expanding, this was time to devote to that on your ideas, writing them down, doing your research. And again, the internet, access to that internet would be key in helping that done. I don't see any loss, any need for any longer loss of time because of shutdown. There's many things you stay busy doing.
All right. So that's going to wrap up our questions. It is 5 o'clock. um, I do want to share that this topics that we talked about here today, they're really addressed in his most recent book, Poor Little Boy. The questions are all around that. And if you haven't already purchased your copy, you can purchase it online or in person. Or if you don't feel comfortable purchasing online, you can. I think you said you would mail them a copy if they want one.
Yeah, we're gonna work that out. I
Yeah,
didn't want to get into that, but yeah, we will. Yes.
we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
So
I'll get that set up.
what if you do want to order now online? It's available in Kindle and it's available as a regular uh, book form. You can order it on Amazon, and I will give a quick walkthrough on how to do that. So from the website jimmcknightbook.com, you simply just scroll down, and on there you'll see both of his books right here. This is My Story of a Sharecropper and Poor Little Boy right here. I'm going to select this one. The website has the Kindle version. If this isn't what you want, you can also select the paperback from here, and the actual paperback version will be shipped to your home. Okay. We also have physical locations in North Carolina, or in Charlotte area, Richmond, Virginia, and Petersburg, Virginia, and I will share that list right here. In Richmond, it's at B's Barbershop, Hayward Salon, DC Artistry. In Petersburg, you can pick it up at the Shell gas station. I can't spell today. Supreme Barbershop, True Skills Barbershop, and We Are One Salon. And in Charlotte, you can pick it up at any of the No Grease Barbershop locations. All right, we still have a couple people here. Does anybody have questions? I'm going to ask you to turn your mic on. So you guys have your mics on now if you want, and please ask questions.
Well, I don't have any questions, Jim. It was very nice, very informative.
And this is Cheryl. This is the author Sahara, correct?
Yeah, that's me. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you don't know who I am. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I didn't really have any questions, but it was interesting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
If that's it, I will go ahead and unless you've got anything to add, Mr. McKnight.
No, just um, check the book out. I'll take criticism, compliments, and purchase orders.
All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Dad, happy Father's Day.
Thank you. I think you did
happy
a good
Happy
job.
Father's Day.
You're about to make a believer out of it. Thank you.
We'll see. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the. I want to end the recording.